so The Shape of Water. This thing won Best Picture. It is an awful film. So I watched it originally and I thought it was an awful film, and then it won Best Picture and I thought, well, I'll give it another shot. Maybe I just missed the point. So I was on a plane to the East Coast and I watched the movie again. All I can say is I wanted to walk off the plane. Okay, it is that bad. It is one of the 10 worst movies ever made. This is not an exaggeration. It is an awful, awful piece of crap. Okay, it is good to look at, right? It's a pretty looking film. It is, in fact, about a woman who has sex with a fish, basically, which is real weird. And here is a little bit of the preview, and then I will discuss how the script is basically written by an SJW 10-year-old with a crayon. I mean, the script is just garbage, but here is what the preview looks like.
She deaf?
Mute, sir. She can hear you.
You clean that lab, you get out.
This may very well be the most sensitive asset ever to be housed in this facility.
You may think that thing looks human. Stands on two legs, right? But we're created in the Lord's image. You don't think that's what the Lord looks like, do you?
This creature is
okay, so this movie is just... Okay, shut it off, stop it, make it stop. Okay, this movie is so awful in every possible way. So every single trope that you could possibly find is in this movie, right? There is so basically it's about a woman who is mute, who falls in love with a fish man from the Black Lagoon, and has to help him escape the clutches of an evil American general and his sidekick, right? A Bible-believing American sidekick who also happens to be a sexual harasser and abuser, as well as a racist and an anti-gay piece of crap, right? So basically, it's every possible trope that the left has ever said about Mike Pence, except they say it about Michael Shannon's character, and he's a villain who just, for no reason, wants to cut open this fish man, this magical fish man. He doesn't want to research him or have a conversation with him. He wants to cut him open for no reason other than America's a terrible place. And this guy, of course, is trained by the military, and the military's awful. It's legitimately every lefty. It's why it won Best Picture. It's every lefty trope. The fish man is helped to escape and have sexual pleasure with a human woman, which is, again, very odd. And all this is aided and abetted by the gay neighbor, right? The generous and wonderful gay neighbor who is rejected in his advances on a younger man. And the younger man, I love that they add this in the movie. The younger man is very nice to the gay man until the gay man makes advances, at which point he goes, whoa, buddy. And then right at that moment in the film, a black couple walks into his diner, and the young man acts racist to the black couple. So it's not enough just to say that the guy wasn't into the whole gay thing, right? He's straight. They also have to imply that the only person who would reject a gay man's advances is a racist, right? So it's pretty amazing. So there's the band of untouchables in this movie who help Fishman escape are a mute woman who apparently, we learn, spoiler alert, can breathe underwater, okay, and a gay man who's being rejected because he's gay, and a black woman who is put upon by her stupid husband. Right? She's a sassy black lady put upon by her stupid husband. That's not a cliche at all in the films. That's not cliched at all. And this group is also aided by an American scientist who happens to be a Russian spy, a Soviet spy. Right? That's how we know he's good, because he's a Soviet spy. It's so bad. Everything about this movie is bad. Every line of dialogue rings false. The way that Guillermo del Toro, who wrote the script, basically. Makes excuses for all of this is because he says that it's a metaphor. So this is the easy way out, right? The easy way out of the conundrum of writing bad movies is to say it's all metaphorical. Don't take it seriously. It's all surreal. Okay, if surreal writing just means you get to write stupid crap that makes no sense and then claim that it's a metaphor, then well done, Guillermo del Toro. And the movie is supremely bad. Don't bother watching it. Instead, get a fish tank and don't have sex with the inmates. All right, so we'll be back here tomorrow with much, much more. A little bit later today, we're going to be interviewing the Speaker of the House from the office where I have declared my coup. And we will be showing that a little bit later this week. Looking forward to it. We will see you then. I'm Ben Shapiro. This is The Ben Shapiro Show. The Ben Shapiro Show is produced by Mathis Glover, executive producer Jeremy Boring, senior producer Jonathan Hay. Our technical producer is Austin Stevens, edited by Alex Zingaro. Audio is mixed by Mike Coromina. Hair and makeup is by Jesua Alvera. The Ben Shapiro Show is a Daily Wire Forward Publishing production. Copyright Forward Publishing 2018. Question. What's more powerful in shaping our views, narrative or argument? Here's an argument against abortion. This is an argument. By the end of the first trimester, fetuses have brainwaves. They have 5 fingers on each hand. They have a stomach. They have functioning kidneys. They have an operational heart. They have fingerprints. And yet each year, 1.6 million abortions are performed, and 91% of those, 1,456,000 abortions, are performed in the first trimester. Now, here's an anti-abortion narrative. Jane was 16 years old. She got pregnant by her boyfriend, and she was pretty, she was smart, and she knew that having this baby was going to ruin her life. So she started asking her friends, she started asking her family members, and they all encouraged her to go ahead and do it. Prompted by these people, she drove to the abortion clinic. She thought it was no big deal. As she walked into the clinic, something odd happened. Another girl accosted her. She said, "All babies want to be born." Jane ignored her. After all, what did this young woman know? "Your baby has a heart," the girl told her. Jane ignored her again. This is still propaganda, she thought. "Your baby has fingernails." Now, that was odd, right? This shook her. She walked into the abortion clinic and she sat down. She glanced around, and she couldn't help but notice that everybody was playing with their fingernails, right? Tapping them on the tables, chewing on them. And she thought, fingernails. I have a life growing inside me. And she walked out of the abortion clinic, and that was the end of the story. Now, let me ask you this. How many of you remember the statistic that I gave you about a minute and a half ago? Now, how many of you remember what prompted Jane to walk out of the abortion clinic? Everybody remembers the fingernails, right? And I promise you that a week from now, even those of you who actually remembered the statistic, and by the way, it was 1,456,000, those of you who remember that will have forgotten the statistic, and you'll remember the fingernail story. Narrative matters. Conservatives, unfortunately, have abandoned narrative as an emotional tool. We've fallen into the trap of thinking that intellectual argument tends to trump emotion. You hear it on talk radio all the time, right? We have all of the logical arguments. We have all the facts on our side. But, you know, they just rely on emotion all the time. Yeah, well, because it works. We need to start taking that fight back. That's the power of narrative. That narrative, by the way, was from the movie Juno, for those of you who recognized it. Hollywood, which is the chief, foremost political tool of the left, it's totally run by liberals at this point. Liberals who discriminate against conservatives, who scorn traditional American values, and who use television in particular as a tool of propaganda in order to achieve their political ends. They use the narrative to push their point of view. They're very clever about it. They recognize that if they slide their messaging in, it's much more effective than if they simply come out and hit you in the head with a 2x4. And so they create characters that we like and that we want to spend time with. This is the whole principle of television. It has to be well written. It has to be based on character. It has to be based on people who you'd rather spend time with than your own family, which we do, by the way. On average, we're watching 2 to 3 hours of television a night. It's a lot more time than you're actually spending with your children, your spouse, the other people in your family. These characters better be people that you like. So Hollywood does that. And then they have those characters act in ways of which you wouldn't approve. It's a very, very effective methodology. They create a set of friends for us, and then they use the behavior of those new friends to convince us to accept new lifestyle choices, new politics, and new policies. Now, Hollywood didn't used to be this way. In the 1950s and even the early 1960s, Hollywood executives were by and large conservative. Early creators were always liberal. They tended to be Jewish socialists from New York. They were vaudevillians. They were liberal in orientation. The battle between these two groups resulted in a relatively nonpartisan kind of television. There were always flashes of liberalism that shone through if the creators could get away with it on occasion, but for the most part, it was sort of down the middle. With the death of Kennedy, Hollywood's liberal creators became more strident. There was a key shift in kind of liberal thinking in America when Kennedy died. We shifted from a hopeful liberalism, you know, the future was going to be great, we were entering the new frontier, to a very pessimistic liberalism. America is a bad place and must be fundamentally changed. At the same time in television, the executives themselves were beginning to become more liberal. They were being replaced by a new breed of advertising agency executives who largely sprung from the milieu of New York. They were young, they were urban, they were hip, and they were liberal. And so everybody was kind of now pulling in the same political direction. They did have one problem in terms of liberalism on television. The audience was still by and large conservative. In 1965, this was a very conservative country. So television was faced with this great dilemma. How could they program left when the country was right? They came up with a scam. This is what Hollywood is fantastic at. Here's the dirty little secret about TV. The TV creators don't give a damn about you. They could not care less about you. They're not interested in you. They're interested in the advertisers. The advertisers are where they get their cash. When you flip on your TV, no matter what you're watching, you're not paying for it except for your cable fees or your satellite TV fees. You're not paying the creators of the television shows. The advertisers are. The only reason audiences are important in the market is because advertisers use those numbers to push to determine how many people are seeing their message. So TV tells the advertisers, here's how many people are watching the show. Now this is how much you should pay for those sets of eyeballs. But that's not all that TV creators and executives do. They say that certain elements of the TV audience are more important than other elements of the TV audience. Not all eyes are equal. This is why you hear all the time about the 18 to 34 or the 18 to 49 crowd, right? Every time you look at the Nielsen ratings about a particular television show, they say, here's the rating, and here's the real key rating, 18 to 49. Now, if you think about that for half a second, it makes absolutely no sense. Why should people 18 to 49 be the targets of advertisers? By and large, people who are 18 to 34 are living in mom and dad's basement, smoking dope, and being unemployed. I mean, I'm in that age group, okay? A lot of my friends are. So the fact is that people who are 50 and above are the only people in this country right now who have savings, who have disposable income, they're retiring, and now they're spending money. And this is an aging country. It's a baby boomer country, which means that the leading network in terms of revenue is CBS. Now, anybody under the age of 40 here, have you ever watched a CBS show? One? Nobody watches NCIS under the age of 40. Nobody. And yet this is one of the highest rated shows on television because everybody over the age of 50 watches these shows, and CBS rakes in the dough. But the TV executives have scammed the advertisers into believing that none of those people truly matter. So they've lied to the advertisers. Now, why do they lie to the advertisers? Originally speaking, there were three major networks, ABC, CBS, NBC. In the late 1960s, ABC only had affiliates in the major urban areas. They were getting their butts handed to them by CBS, which had affiliates everywhere. Right? It was actually having all of the top shows with Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, and Petticoat Junction, right? Not exactly liberal urban type shows. Now, what happened is that ABC figured, okay, we got to make some money. How are we going to do this? We'll scam the advertisers and tell them that our viewers are more important than their viewers. And because there was a bunch of liberal creators and executives and a bunch of liberal ad agency people, they said, okay, that sounds great. Now, there was an ancillary purpose here. What is, by and large, the most liberal age group in the country? 18 to 34, 18 to 49. And that's why they've been allowed to program liberal, and that's why they lie and they say the market demands our liberalism. Right? This is what shuts down conservatives. This is really what primetime propaganda is different. Everybody who's critiqued TV before has said, yeah, TV's liberal. And then the left says, okay, so TV's liberal. You're asking for it. You don't like it, turn the channel. Only one problem. There's nothing to turn the channel to. The same people control all the channels. And number two, they're not really marketing to you. They don't care about you. Even if we did turn the channel, for the most part, conservatives tend to be older. They tend not to live in urban areas, and therefore they're not the view.